Assalamu alaikum. Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Points. I'm your host, Neaz Ahmad. In our studios today, we have an educationist and presently a political analyst, Mr. Syed Mamnoon Murshid. Welcome to the show, sir.
Assalamu alaikum and thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, viewers.
Thank you for coming along despite the very bad weather today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, the ways of the world, particularly the subcontinent in Asia, from where we come from, is in a bit of a mess. The situation for the minorities is never very pleasant anywhere in the world. But right now it seems the brunt of the situation is being suffered by or being tortured by the people who promise that India will become a secular country where everybody will live peacefully and minorities will live according to their own program, whatever religion or whatever social norms they have. But it's not happening so. Nor is it happening in many other countries, like across the border from Bangladesh in Myanmar. See, the same thing is happening. So-called minorities, Rohingyans, are being deprived of nationality and driven across the border over to another country. See, how do you see the present situation? I mean, there are a lot of theories. People are talking about rightist leaders are coming up in the world in many countries, and they are coming to popular vote. So how do you see the whole situation, particularly where we come from, the Southeast Asia, the subcontinent?
Thank you, Neaz Bhai. I think it's a very pertinent question. From the offset, I think the Western world should realize that the present political far-right leadership in India has moved away miles and miles from secularism. There's nothing secular in India. The entire ethos or the philosophy of Nathuram Godse is what is perpetuating. And I'm sure you mean this week's recent communal riots.
Yeah.
I think what's happening in the subcontinent is a complete travesty of events. Certainly not on the lines of Dr. Ambedkar's Constitution of India, which guarantees secularism.
Right.
That isn't there. There is people inciting violence. You can see it openly that you go into Muslim areas, poor areas, where small businesses and others have been totally destroyed, and you are forced to say Jai Sri Ram.
Yeah.
They have torched mosques, they've torched shops and very small shops and others. This is how people were making a living and now forced into destitution. So it's similar to what happened in 2002 in Gujarat, where Mr. Modi was leading chief minister. In 2002, there were 2,000 Muslims killed. Most of them were small businessmen and others, and there's to date no compensation. And above all, they have been forced into destitution. I think the present rulership would like to scatter
But
Muslims.
it's not just the Muslims, you see, it's the minorities
Yes,
in that
the
particular
Christians.
country that are suffering. The Dalits, see,
You
the
see
Harijans, but
There are
Gandhiji
there are
was-
leaderships within India which oppose this. I have noticed that a lot of protests that were taking place, it all started with the Citizens Amendment Act, CAA, where no one of Muslim heritage returning to India can claim citizenship.
Right.
It doesn't apply to anyone else. Only Muslims.
Right.
And Muslims have been there for thousands of years. They've ruled the country. They've stayed on in the country. This is Maulana Azad's India. India today is a nation of the biggest Muslim population in the world.
But is that the fear that this will be, the number of Muslims will be going up so high that the other followers of other religion, right now the majority Hindu, they will become minority? Is that the fear?
I don't think that's a possible
that will take
fear.
ages.
It will take ages, probably a few more centuries,
Right.
if that happens. But I don't think that is the thing. It's just a kind of hatred.
Mm-hmm.
It's in these days having communal riots. You know, we've noticed a bit of that in Ireland. But again, I'll give you another thing since we stay in the West. Look at a country like Belgium,
Right.
which has French-speaking Catholics and Flemish-speaking Protestants.
Right.
For centuries, they've lived together in harmony. And they are further apart, even being Christians, than Shias and Sunnis. The faith is very different, despite the fact that they're Christians. However, they've been able to live together in peace and harmony, and so on and so forth.
What we are talking about when you talk about Europe, see, I am not going to say that we are backward or we are not cultured and we are not educated, you see. But here are things in places, see, the institutions in place that do make sure that one does not exceed his own limits, you see,
Absolutely.
the other parties.
No, the point is they have been exceeding and exceeding at length. It's come to a very morbid situation. It's a very sad plight of Indian Muslims and so on and so forth. In Delhi, they're probably just a little under 20% of the population. But if you take, say, West Bengal, they're 1/3 of the population. In Assam, they're 40%. If you see Kashmir, they're a complete overwhelming majority. And they had a special status, which, if you've noticed, in 1919, the savagery committed by the political leadership sending the Indian army was, you can't imagine the plight of Muslims, where even their first leader was committed to a plebiscite. That's what stopped the war in 48, the commitment of a plebiscite, which was never held, and so on and so forth. But today, that's history, it's gone. But when you're looking at the 21st century, and we're now coming very close to a quarter of it, it's 2020. And what happened in 3 days, the carnage in Delhi, was a complete travesty of events, as I mentioned earlier. And above all, I think in record we've seen something like 48 deaths, of which
and
30
hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of property have gone up in that.
Absolutely, few million dollars of property have gone up in flames. I don't know if there can ever be a restoration or some kind of compensation. I was watching Mr. Kejriwal saying something, but he was very silent during the riots. And then I don't know how many years it will take to ever get people move on, die, and so on and so forth. I think the idea is not to have pockets where there are Muslims.
Don't you think that this is, I mean, this is a tragedy of a tragedy of all greater design, that while India was in focus, Mr. Trump was there, the media was there, this was happening in the capital of the country.
It's very true, but you know, you have to start out with the way Mr. Trump came in. He went into Gujarat. They're trying to change the name of Ahmedabad.
Yeah.
They haven't managed to do it yet, but they will. He and Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah were doing it. And if you noticed, the saffron crowd in Gujarat, these were you see 125,000 invited guests, all card-holding members of the BJP, a very far-right sort of group. And that itself, you have a far-right president of the United States, you have a far-right government in the United Kingdom, you have it in Israel. This is all perhaps somewhere an alliance which is coming in. And oddly enough, in a few comments that Mr. Trump made regarding the situation he was more concerned about Christians. I don't think, apart from Senator Bernie Sanders, anyone who's directly said about the plight of Muslims and the way they were abused. You see? And it's small groups of women sat down after, they felt that they will not get citizenship.
Yeah, but don't you think this, our subcontinent is one of the most least integrated areas, see? Like, we don't have friendship across the border, this country with that, that country with this, you see. There might be some pseudo-friendship or people might claim that, yes, we are friends, but just in names. You see. We have problems. They have problems, Pakistan and India. India has problems with Nepal, India has problems with other areas, China. India is a great friend of Afghanistan, but that has no border with India. India is a great friend of, so-called great friend of Burma, but Burma is a great friend of, or Myanmar is a great friend of China. See. Bangladesh is possibly the only so-called great friend of India. See. But yet, we don't have that kind of integrated friendship in the areas, see, as a SARC would make us think. See. They have much better relationship in Africa, in Organization of African Unity. Think of European Union, think of others, see, in America. They have organizations that integrate, but we have an organization that does not integrate. 7 nations, this SARC, that has not brought them together.
This is very true in the sense that, I think the sore thumb with Pakistan has been Kashmir, and very rightly so. And without some kind of solution there, I don't see how progress is possible. However, despite many years, it started in the early 80s, now it's getting to 38 years where we've had SARC. There's no one has talked about a customs union like you have in Europe. I don't know if it's possible. The friendship with Bangladesh is again a friendship with the leadership, but again I don't think I think the friendship is very fragile. There's something very artificial about it. Yes, you would say.
India was with Bangladesh.
With India and Bangladesh. There's something very fragile, very artificial about it. And I don't think there's any depth in that. However, Bangladesh is a country which, out of some geographical necessity, is reliant in the eastern provinces of India. But when Bangladeshis travel to India and buying Indian goods, we add to the West Bengal economy, sometimes to the Assam's economy, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so time to take a break, and when we come back, we'll retrace ourselves back to Assam, as you were talking about Assam.
Yes,
thank you for being with us. We'll be back soon after this short break. Don't go away.